This is The Future Of, where experts share their vision of the future and how their work is helping shape it for the better.
I'm David Karsten. From TVs to toys, digital technology is ubiquitous in the lives of children and parents. While we know that growing up in a digital environment influences development, our picture of its precise impact remains blurry. Current research draws wide and varied conclusions, and public perception of kids using screens often skews to the negative. Well, today I was joined by Dr Amber Beynon, a research fellow at Curtin's School of Allied Health, whose recent research challenges common views on the impact of infant screen time. In our chat, we discussed Amber's impactful research into the relationship between infant development, screen time, and other family factors, and explored ways parents can navigate our increasingly technological world. If you'd like to know more about this research, you can visit the links in the show notes. Amber, full disclosure, I'm the father of an 11-year-old who has lived with screens, I think, since she was born. So I come with a certain bias and certainly, I guess, a set of guilt that that I'm putting before you with the hope of absolution. But look, before we dive into the research that you've been doing, could you share with us what we know so far about the impact of screen time on a child's development?
Yeah, well, as you said, it's all around us and screens are a part of everyday life. We know that so many children are engaging with screen use and using it at a younger age. So it's really important to many families. There's a lot of mixed research out there that excessive screen use is associated with delays in areas such as communication, motor skills and social development. But it's actually more complex than that in just saying screens are bad. Because then there's other research that says screens are associated with better language and executive function. But what we really need to think about and where the gap is how it really fits into the broader family environment and how screen use could fit in with other factors like parental mental health.
As far as parental mental health is concerned, Amber, does it actually extend beyond just allaying the guilt of the amount of time your child spends in front of a screen?
Yes, I think it does. Directly in our research, we found that there were some associations between screen use and infant development, such as infants using mobile touchscreen devices. But what we found more consistently is that poorer parental mental health, such as increased depression and anxiety by both mothers and fathers, were more consistently linked to poorer child developmental outcomes. So this shows us that we really should be supporting parents' mental health rather than just considering screen time as leading to poor development. Parental mental health may be just as, if not more important, than just focusing on reducing screen time.
Kids can pick up a vibe, can't they? They are very intuitive, and I guess what you're saying there is that it's a whole equation. It's not just about a screen. It's so much more than that, isn't it?
Exactly. It's considering the entire family system in which screen use is just one element, along with parental mental health, along with the environment that the child is in. So there's no point just taking one element in isolation. We really need to support the family as a whole.
There's a lot of avenues that you're sort of investigating, and we're off to a flying start, Amber, but let's focus on, I guess, the sample group at which you're looking at in your research. You're focused specifically on infant development, right?
Exactly, yes.
So what are you finding there, and is exposure to screens at an infant sort of level, is that a fairly common thing now?
It is fairly common. So we found on average in the group we were looking at, which were infants 12 months of age, that they were on average watching TV 30 minutes a day and using mobile touchscreen devices, so that's tablets and phones, 5 minutes a day. And this is as young as 1 year of age. This is using data from the Origins project, which is a large cohort here in Western Australia. And then we looked at the role of mobile touchscreen devices on their development.
Okay, so we're looking at communication, language development, but I guess this is a little bit further down the track. Is there, a residual effect on reading as well? I guess from my perspective, I've really noticed the engagement with reading is actually something I'm really having to push, and I don't know if that would be the case or if it would indeed still be the case if screens weren't a part of the equation, because some kids just don't engage with reading as much as others do, right? So yeah, how do you measure all of those sort of impacts?
It's a very good question. Can't give you absolute answers because we've only been looking at the 12 months old so far, but we do plan to continue on to the older children. But I think it's how it's being used. It's not so black and white as screens are replacing books, or it can only be one or the other. Screens could be utilised in ways that can enhance reading, or it could be utilised in ways that will maybe be detrimental. So it's not so clear cut, and that's what we're finding now. It's how it's being used is important.
So really, it's not a simple case of calling out parents to cut screen time altogether.
Exactly. It's more about the balance and how the screens are being used and looking at the broader family environment. Technology is part of modern life and it's not going anywhere, but it's not something we should be afraid of. We should really have a bigger picture approach. Instead of just fixating on screen time alone, we need to think about the child's overall development and the other factors in the child's routine. Are they also engaging in active play, reading books, having time outside? Technology is just one element to the picture, and technology can be utilised to help enhance different areas as well.
I guess there's a flip side to that as well, and that to that argument of cutting screen time out altogether, in that there is that equitable access to technology, because it is such a massive part of our lives that really our kids do need to have a bit of a handle on that before they engage perhaps with technology in sort of a schooling context, for instance.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think it's about, particularly in the early years, scaffolding technology use. So allowing in the early years parents to be really engaged and teaching children safe use of technology. So then when they're left to their own devices, particularly as teenagers, they know how to do this in a safe manner and using the most beneficial aspects of technology use.
So with regards to your research at an infant development level, you talk about perhaps investigating these longer term effects with an older cohort. Will it be the same cohort as part of a longitudinal study?
Yes, it will be. So far, using the Origins project, the children have been followed up to 5 years of age, and this will continue to 8 years of age. It's a rolling cohort. So this year we'll be looking at the data from the toddlers, so 2 to 3 year olds, and then hopefully next year looking into the preschoolers. So it'll be really interesting to see how changes of technology use on child development perhaps changes over time as the child grows.
Amber, this must be such an interesting field of research to be a part of over the long term. But with what you've found so far, how can this research actually help at a practical level as far as parents marshalling their children's development while navigating all this tech? I mean, it's a bit of a minefield for us as parents as well, right?
Definitely. I think one of our key findings is that not all screens are inherently bad. What matters more is the context instead of just the amount of time using screens. Instead of saying all screens are harmful, we need to think about what type of screens are being used. Are they just passively watching an iPad, or are they using an interactive app? How is it being used? Are screens replacing valuable interactions, or are they used alongside the carers? And what's happening in the broader family environment? Another really important finding we found in our research was that parental mental health plays a bigger role in child development than screen use itself. So rather than parents pushing to cut out screens entirely, we should really consider the healthy use of screens, which might actually be helping parents' mental health as well, instead of putting all the guilt on parents to try to be perfect.
Oh, Amber, I feel so much better. Praise be. But look, in amongst all of those different scenarios, can you give us, I guess, some definitive advice on the best way to employ screens that is beneficial to our child's development? If it's not all bad, what are the good ways of doing so?
That's a very good question. But unfortunately, the problem is I can't give a definitive answer because it's not black and white. What would work for one child won't necessarily work for another child. But in giving an answer, I would say using technology to enhance connections would be a great start. So engaging in technology together with your child, or using technology to boost physical activity or connection to outside. For example, Nature Play WA has some fantastic apps out there like their nature trails and their talk walk, which is all about using technology in different ways to enhance connections amongst friends, family, and in particular nature, and getting outside with that.
Oh, that's really clever. I think, yeah, there's lots of merit in that. I mean, I guess the battle for a lot of parents, and I'm just putting my hand up here, is, well, how do we combine screens and outside activities? You know, tearing the child away from the screen actually requires you to bring them outside, and if Nature Play WA has some apps that are able to combine the two, oh, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Amber. That's wonderful. With regards to this research as a whole, this is a very basic question that maybe we should have asked that at the very beginning. But what is important about it to you? Why is it important to investigate how screens and digital tech are actually affecting our child's development?
Well, in particular for infant development, infancy is a critical period of development in so many different ways. Physical, emotional, cognitive. It really lays the foundation for lifelong learning, behaviour and health. And there's not a whole lot of research within that younger years in infancy. And technology isn't going anywhere. So we really need to see how it can potentially play a role. We also need to move beyond a one-size-fits-all recommendation. Technology is constantly evolving. And I know many parents, educators, policymakers are asking the questions about how are these new technologies playing a role in children's life at a young age. So we really need to be teaching children how to use screens well to minimise risk and help them gain benefits from now into the future.
It's an opportunity in a way too. I was just thinking, Amber, that I guess parents and educators back in the 60s and 70s were probably wrestling with similar questions with the advent of television, right? But television is a slightly different proposition. It's not interactive. It very much is a passive activity, isn't it? And so there's a generation of parents like myself who were brought up with our parents telling us to, get outside and get some fresh air and stop plonking yourself down in front of the TV for hours on end, taking, I guess, that notion of passive screen interaction and applying it to our tablets that we have today. It's very different now, isn't it? And that notion of interactivity and then being able to share that experience with your child is, I guess, it opens up opportunities, right?
It definitely opens up so many opportunities. Back in the day with the television, there was only 3, 4, 5 channels and set times. Maybe children's TV shows were only on for an hour in the morning and a couple hours in the evening. So it's a completely different world now. And the portability of the devices to take them outside and the different uses you can use technology is a whole new world. And it is hard for parents to navigate when they've come from these broadcast networks with limited time on TVs to it's all around us. So parents are learning with their children just as much as children are learning how to use it.
Now, you talk about technology evolving and changing. We're in the throes of an AI revolution at the moment, artificial intelligence. What does that mean in terms of the tech that our kids are interacting with?
That's a fantastic question. AI is shaping the way that children engage with technology and interact with technology, and in particular using it younger. So AI has been used from personalised learning apps to interactive toys, particularly for the younger children. I think AI has incredible potential, but we also need to ensure it's used in ways that support children's well-being and learning. AI, like any other technology, it's important to be aware of its risks. And like any new technology, it could be quite scary for parents. And parents really need to learn how to use it safely. And parents and children can learn together to hopefully harness the potential, but also minimise risks. I agree that the AI revolution is exciting. However, it is new and is ongoing and really needs some rigorous research to understand its influences.
Well, has that rigorous research been undertaken by yourself and your team? Because really, if it's happening now, is this going to be a part of your longitudinal study with that cohort of infants, toddlers, young people into the future?
At this stage, not necessarily within the cohort that I'm exactly looking into, but I know there are others within our centre, which is the Australian Research Council's Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child, that are looking into the influences of AI in children.
And just at a very surface level, just thinking about AI, the potential there to be, I guess, adaptive to an individual child's development is what makes it really exciting. Is that a fair assumption?
It is extremely exciting. The learning capacity of this AI technology is next level, and it can really show the difference between how it can interact with one child to another and remember those interactions, which is a little bit scary, but also can be beneficial to learning, to its recommendations that it gives, the way it plays. But we do have to be a bit, obviously, cautious with a technology that's so powerful.
Well, I'm just hoping that it's going to be developed enough to help my kid with algebra homework, because it's probably going to do a better job than me.
Well, that would be amazing.
Look, I don't know how comfortable you are about speaking about your own situation, both as a researcher and as an individual outside of research, but what inspired you to go down this career path, and has, in that time, your circumstances changed to become even more relevant?
Yes, no problem. Well, I've always really been interested in childhood health and development. I've always believed it's so important to think about development at an early stage and really starting right from the early years. As I've dived deep into the research, I found that there's a real gap in understanding in how technology fits in with the broader family factors. And now, more recently, as a new parent, it's become even more relevant.
There we go. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. So now I have a 10-month-old little boy, and I can see from pregnancy that there was so much guilt in parenting in all aspects. So in this research, I really wanted to bring a more nuanced perspective to try to limit the guilt surrounding screens and provide a more positive message. The goal is to provide evidence-based guidance that help parents feel empowered rather than guilty when it comes to technology use. Technology use is just one part of the puzzle, and I'm finding this more and more as I interact with my son, that he's quite young, of course, but we really need to help children thrive both online and offline. So that's really pushing my avenue of research further.
Well, the question I need to ask is, are you able to switch off? Are you constantly researching even when you come home?
Of course, particularly in child development, watching how he grows and develops and how I can enhance that in different ways. So, and I love my job, I love my research, so I don't feel like I really have the desire to switch off, really. It's just part of everything, and I think it's so amazing to see it firsthand.
Amber, this work is so important to such a broad section of the community. There are so many kids and equally so many parents looking for guidance. What is to become of the findings that you've come to?
That is a great question. Right now, these are published findings in research, but they're not so easily accessible to parents, to families, to policymakers. So that is another avenue of research that my colleague is doing in trying to make these findings more accessible in how parents can use it, because we know parents and families are so time poor. So we're trying to establish ways that we can actually share this information and translate this information to families out there. So watch this, and hopefully we'll be able to share this information in a more accessible way in the future.
Amber, that's great. Please keep us posted. We're all dying to know how to, I guess, be better parents in a digital age. We've really valued the time that you spent with us today to talk to us about your research, Amber. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's fantastic to hear the interest in this area, and hopefully it'll be helpful to parents out there.
You've been listening to The Future Of, a podcast powered by Curtin University. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. And don't forget to subscribe to The Future Of on your favourite podcast app. Bye for now.